Let's talk about truth audit. And I want to get everyone to start realizing what are the truths you are accepting as something that keeps being in your reality, that you can't do anything about it, and therefore you need to continue living your life the way that you don't want to. Right? So I could give you like million different examples of how this keeps coming up in coaching. Oftentimes it is about I have confidence issues, that's my truth, and I can't do anything about it. I have tried many things, nothing worked. That is how we kept accepting that to be truth, and therefore keep letting that influence our lives for the rest of our lives, right? So that's just one of the examples. Another example that is common is I have no clue and I don't know how to, and I cannot do that, and therefore we keep undermining ourselves. And that becomes a truth, and we keep accepting that to be the truth and keep going forward with it. Another common example that I hear is I have never been able to change this thing in my life that I wanted. I struggled, I did everything, and still I'm not there where I want to. And therefore, we keep accepting that to be true and accepting that we can't do anything about it. And therefore, we just keep working on it for the rest of our lives. Right? So you understand what I'm saying is when I say that let's look at all the thing that we accepted as truths, that we cannot do something with it, and therefore we keep struggling and suffering from it and feeling like we can't really get rid of it or we can't really solve it, and it just needs to be like part of our lives. And then we keep going about it, and maybe even we have spent a lot of money and time, energy to solving it, and then feeling like there's nothing we can do about it, right? So that type of truth I would like for us to have an audit on, meaning that we start getting aware of what are the truths that we're accepting as this is how it is, this is how it has always been, and excuse me, that we cannot do anything with it, and therefore feeling like we need to be now victim of those truths, right? The reason why it is important to start realizing this is not only because it's costing us a lot of suffering and a lot of time and energy keep solving it, but also we know that if we haven't solved it, or if we keep focusing on this is the problem, then we keep also not really living the life we want to, right? We keep feeling like we're never there where we are supposed to. And I just want to give you several of examples from my own life where I used to feel like this is the truth and nothing I can do about it, especially when it comes to money, when it comes to relationships, and when it comes to what's possible outside of the UN, right? And then I'm realizing also that if I had kept that to be true and that's just how it is, then I wouldn't have never been able to live and create the life that I have currently, right? So one of the examples that I often talk about is the relationships. I grew up with the truth that relationships are violent, right? Because that's how I saw my parents, that's how I saw relatives around me, that's how I saw all the women in my village who all suffered from physical violence of their partners, not partners, sorry, husbands, because we don't really had that concept of partner at the time. So everyone would suffer from that, right? So we all, as a society, and me including as a child, accepted that to be true. Now, imagine if I had continued like having that truth in my life and continue living my life that way, then I would have probably married someone or had into relationship with someone who was also violent and then kept suffering from it. So removing that from my life was the best thing I could work on and the best thing that I have done for my own life, right? So that comes from not accepting that to be a norm and not accepting that to be truth in my life. So I will talk about how I did that and how you can do that as well. But I just want you to start seeing us accepting something as true and keep having it in our reality, how much of that impact it has on quality of our lives, right? And the same goes for my UN story, right? So the UN story that I think you can all relate to, which is something like, this was the best success that I had in life, or this is the highest I could have achieved. Now that I'm transitioning to something else, obviously I can't expect those type of outcomes. Therefore, the truth is that I need to settle for whatever that comes my way, right? And this is, I think, the biggest way that a lot of humanitarians accept this to be true, right? Accept the truth as if to say, we have had our great times. It was great, maybe in terms of successful career, in terms of titles, privileges, maybe even impact. All of that was great, belonging, maybe. And now we're accepting the truth that our brain says, or competitive society says, which is, well, we can't really hope for that type of outcomes anymore. Look at the job market, look at this, look at that. And therefore, obviously, I cannot build that life that I want to, or career success that I want to, or impact success that I want to. And then we accept the truth of we should settle for less. And then we just make that a reality, right? And the same goes for money, by the way. Is, I think, money part is the biggest thing that I needed to work on, but also the outcome of it is, once I started looking at how I have accepted money to be a scarce thing, that poor, I need to like die for it and this kind of thing. And I accepted that truth that kept being my truth in my whole life, right? And then I said, okay, that's not how I want to accept my truth anymore. I want to audit and look at, why am I treating money that way? Why am I treating money in a way that is uh like the king that I need to dance around kind of thing, right? And then I thought, okay, if I don't want to be dancing around money and doing everything for money, or doing everything to get money, or doing everything to prove that I can be worthy of money, if I don't want to do any of those things, then the truth audit that I needed to do is my life is, I'm capable of making whatever money I want to. Right? That's the thing that I'm talking about, is we have somehow accepted other people's restrictions, scarcity, other people's fears. We have accepted them to be true, and not only we have internalized them, and now we made it our own truth. And as long as we keep making that our truth, and as long as we keep again confirming how we can't do anything about it, again confirming how this is the only way to live, and confirming how everyone else is also suffering, and how everyone else is doing this and that and that, then we will not be living the life we want to, because we have accepted that to be true. So what I'm suggesting is, look at whether it's the money aspect, whether it's the career aspect, whether it's your personal how you see yourself aspect, whether it's your relationships, whether it's your relationship with yourself, whatever the aspect of your life where you feel like that's not how you would like things to be, then look at what are the things that you have accepted as true, even though that was never meant to be your truth, right? Like, getting aware of what are the things that we're accepting to be true just because everyone else around us seem to be having the same issue, or just because everyone else seem to be talking about the same things, just because we grew up believing or seeing that this is how it is, or just because we have struggled about this in the past and now we just feel like we tried everything and nothing worked and for us and we can't do anything about it, and then feeling like we can't get rid of it, right? So that's the truth audit that I would like for you to look at and start seeing how and why you have accepted them to be true. And sometimes also I can see that a lot of my clients get hung up on why this is happening, or this is not how it should be happening, or this is how I was raised from childhood, and therefore nothing I can do about it. That's also going to harm you, right? Whatever it happened in the childhood, there are many different ways to solve them. And you have probably seen in your own life how it is possible with some of the topics. But it might be now time for us to really look at, okay, what are the truths that I have accepted to be true that don't need to be true anymore, and what can I do about it, no matter how it happened, no matter who caused it, no matter where you got it, no matter who imparted you that wisdom, no matter whether you have tried it many times in the past and didn't work, whatever the story that you're telling yourself about the past, instead focus on, okay, what is it that you can do now so that that truth is no longer part of your reality. So here is how I did with every problem that I believed I had, and to no longer make that a problem of my life, right? So starting with, let's say, violence, right? The violence is one of the, I think, the biggest thing that I have removed from my life, from my subconsciousness, in a way that it was no longer a problem. So I stopped accepting the truth that violence just is part of life everywhere, right? And first I started with the physical violence, and then I continued with the emotional violence, and I start realizing, okay, I do not want that to be true in my life. I don't want violence to be just true in my life. So what am I going to do, right? So one way that is very powerful that I have done, and I'm very grateful for having done it, I have firmly decided not to associate myself with that thing anymore, with the physical violence, especially, and then emotional violence, right? So I have firmly decided that I no longer hang out with people who have that. I no longer date people who, in any way, shape, or form, might find physical violence okay. I have also started noticing what kind of people around me, especially at work, what kind of people around me, and whether I allow them to emotionally abuse me or not. And if I am allowing them to emotionally abuse me, how would that look like? And why am I tolerating? I started looking at all of these and started deciding that that's not how I want to be treated, and that's not how I want to allow anyone to treat me, because that is not the truth in my life. The same goes for money aspect, right? So I understood that a lot of the money problems and scarcity and all of this came from other people, and I internalized them and I made them my truths, and then I just kept going as to how the life is hard, making money is hard, you need to die for it, you need to do this, all of those things. I have internalized it. And that's why I kept accepting that to be true. Now, when I decided I don't want to accept that to be true, then I started being aware of all the internalizations that I have made without really realizing it, or maybe with even consent, and then realize that's not how I want to accept this to be true in my life. Because accepting that to be true in my life would have meant that I would never leave UN, right? Because if I thought, okay, I can sustain myself, I can sustain living the way I want to and doing the things that I want to, I can't sustain it if I don't make money, or if I can't earn money and live off this, then I wouldn't have even transitioned to begin with. Because my truth would have been, the only way I can make the amount and do the thing that I want to is within the UN, then I would have never transitioned to something else. So that's why I needed to understand that the truth about how only in UN you can be successful, only you in UN you can make this money or whatever, that truth was no longer true. I have challenged that truth and I thought, okay, how can I prove to myself that I can make it even more successful doing something else that I love outside of UN and with all the people that I want to work with? How can I make that happen so that I showed myself that what I believe to be true is no longer true? And you can do that with anything. Excuse me. So once you start realizing, oh, these are the things that I have accepted to be true about me, then you start looking at, okay, how can I show to myself that this is no longer true in my life? How can I, you don't even need to prove that, because proof sounds like as if, now you need to hustle and grind and get things done and then prove it to yourself. No, I don't really believe in that anymore. But you can always look at it, even if, let's say, it's a confidence issue, even if, let's say, it is security and safety issue, right? So let's say that you have always considered to be true that you are an insecure person. You have accepted to be true that you have confidence issues, and you have always thought that that's just how it is and that's how you're going to do for the rest of your life. And now you're challenging that truth about yourself. If you're challenging that truth about yourself, now you start looking at, okay, how is me without those issues going around living life? Right? How does that look like? Like, if I didn't focus on that anymore, if I didn't try to solve it anymore, if I didn't constantly remind myself how I'm not secure person, how I'm this and how I'm that, if I remove all of this and instead focus on, okay, if the truth was always, or even now, if the truth is now that you are someone who's a very secure, confident person, how would you go around living your life? What are the things you would be focusing on? How would you be focusing on? And then you start exploring how that alternative looks like. And I feel like oftentimes we're not really focusing on how it would look like without us constantly having that problem to solve. Right? And that all comes from, okay, whatever happened in the past happened, and I'm not even like saying, oh, I've done all these things and it still didn't work, and how it didn't work, and how this is da, 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 da. Don't do that to yourself. Instead, looking at, okay, if I don't have this as a problem anymore, how would my life be? Let me go and explore that. Might be another way to go and start exploring being that person. And then, of course, your brain will be throwing things like, well, but you can't really do that because you are this and you're not, and that's not true, da 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 da, all of those things. And then you can observe and say, that is my old personality talking or my old patterns talking. I don't want to pay attention to them. I don't want to give them power. Instead, I want to experience myself being the person who no longer has this issue. How does that look like? And start exploring. At least start with this. So you have the part about learning what you've accepted to be true. If that is not something you want to have in your life, then you start challenging them and start looking at them and saying, okay, is that how you want to be, consenting to how truth is in your life? And if that's not who you want to be, then start exploring how it is you without that those problems and those issues and those things and da 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 da. Without that, how are you? And start exploring being that person, while noticing how your old patterns will come up every time. And then instead of keep feeding them with your power and focus, you start gently going to know, this is how I'm experiencing myself being now, and go do that. Okay, my dears, if you'd like to support, if you'd like my support in this, come coach with me. In the meantime, have a beautiful week.